Hello, I'm Paul Goodridge, and this is your Excuseless Mental Health Reset devotional thought. Isaiah chapter 26 and verse 3 says, "Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusteth in thee." One of the ways in which we can experience peace is by trusting in God. And one of the ways that we can trust in God is by reading His Word, especially His promises. Reading how He has blessed others, reading how He has come through for others, reading how He has kept His Word. And so as we attempt and as we continue our journey to reset our mental health, I want to encourage you to read the Word of God. Read the promises of God. See His faithfulness, not just to His children, but that includes us as well. May God bless you as we continue to reset our mental health.
The information shared in this show is for the sole purpose of being informative, should not be considered complete, and does not cover all issues related to mental health. This information should not replace consultations with your doctor, other qualified mental health providers, and/or specialists. If you believe you or another individual is suffering from a mental health crisis or other medical emergencies, contact your doctor immediately, seek medical attention immediately in an emergency room, or emergency mental health services. Welcome back, Excuseless family. Yesterday, we spoke about the grieving of a person that may have died. Today, we are going to talk about a lot of other ways that we may not have even realized need the grieving process. As always, this is meant to be informational. If you find yourself going through your own personal mental health crisis, we are encouraging you to find a healthcare professional, find a mental health professional that can allow you to be able to start navigating your own mental health. In the meantime, join us for part 2 of this incredible conversation about grief. And there are times when I know there are people out there where a person kind of experienced a loss years ago. Mm-hmm. And they think, well, that happened 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So it still shouldn't make me tear up, or it still shouldn't make me sad. How do you deal with patients or the people you counsel where they're just like, it's been 15 years, Dr. Scott. I shouldn't still have a moment when I think about it. No, it's not consuming my day, but why am I still sad about this thing?
It may mean that you really didn't deal with it.
Ooh. Mm-hmm.
You're not finished dealing with it. Mm-hmm. When you lose someone, you lose more than that person. Mm-hmm. You lose all the aspects that person had in your life. Mm-hmm. Like for a spouse to lose a husband, you lost the one that took out the trash.
Yeah,
I had a friend tell me, I still resent the fact that I have to take out the trash.
Yeah.
Did you lose the person who manages the money? Mm-hmm. There's just so many different facets of a relationship.
Yeah.
And you lose every facet of that relationship. And some of it you may feel more than others. And you need to allow yourself to grieve all those different facets.
That is remarkable, because I actively remember shortly after my mother died, and I remember thinking, who am I supposed to talk to about motherhood and my children?
Yes.
You know, I didn't even think about grieving that specific loss. You know, you think about, oh, this person died and I'm grieving the whole loss. But just being able to like pick up the phone and say, hey, my daughter's doing this. Did I do this when I was little? You know, I didn't have that. And so that resentment that you said your friend had about taking out the trash, there was a resentment that I had for a little while. It was just like, you know, how dare that I not have that when I knew that there were other people that were experiencing that. So I do want to maybe touch on the anger sometimes that comes with grief.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
They shouldn't have left, and nobody dies at the right time.
Oh,
it's either too early or too late. All the time, the death is untimely.
Yes.
Or it's not the right kind of death. And we know that people also die who shouldn't die. We experience people who die by violence, an accident, motor vehicle accident. Sometimes people shouldn't die.
Yeah.
We don't feel like they should die. It's untimely. And you have to feel that. It's okay. But what I also think is important that we should mention is that if you feel the same on day 100 as you did on day 1, something's wrong. If you feel differently, the same 1 year as you did 30 days out, there's something you're not dealing with. There's something preventing you, because you should feel different. I tell people that grieving is a journey. It's not a destination, it's a journey. So as you are on the journey, you should be getting to different places so that it feels different. So that you can make changes in your life that's not related to that, but maybe because of that. And it's okay.
Listen, I know you are speaking, if nobody else to me, but I know you're speaking to somebody out there when you said that grief is a journey. Because a lot of times I think that when people are experiencing grief, they think, when you think about a journey, even when you have a place where you are journeying, sometimes there are highs to that journey and lows to that journey.
Right.
Sometimes the journey gets a little harder. Sometimes it gets easier as you go along. And so I think maybe there are people out there, I know initially when I was experiencing grief, I assumed that it was always going to be like this very specific and consistent way to deal with it. And by the time I got to this point,
A, B, C,
D,
I'm done.
I'm done. You know, or even we read for those of us that sometimes use the internet as our people that being diagnosed, which is why we encourage you to get in touch with a healthcare professional. But you see, maybe there are 12 steps, right? That was that was me. I saw there are 12 steps to grief, right? And I thought, I'm going to experience these in this order, and when you get to the 12th step, congratulations.
And in all fairness, if you get through the steps, that's part of a journey. And when you get at the end of those 12 steps, you should be at a different place than you were at step 1.
Yes.
And if it's not, then there's an issue. And you have to figure out, what is it that's preventing you from getting through this? Grieving does not mean that you're forgetting the person or that you're not respecting them anymore. They expect you to love others still. It may change how you do other relationships. It may mean that you remember that time is limited, and so you should value people differently, more. It might mean that, but it's going to teach you something. So that your relationships will change because you've lost someone.
I love that. Before we shift gears, because I do want to talk about how grieving a person that is still alive.
Okay.
But I want to also hear what your thoughts about, I've heard the term, and I don't know if this is the correct term, about compounded grief, where like you're in the process of grieving a person that has died. And then maybe immediately another loss will happen right on top of that. And does that kind of stop the process, or does it complicate the process more? Or should a person, as they're dealing with loss of one person, recognize that maybe the grieving process will start from the beginning totally, or with just that person? How does that work?
Yes, no, maybe.
I love it.
I've had people in grief classes who said that class, even though they came for this particular grief, it helped them deal with a past grief. Because some of the same issues will come up. Again, you get to do it your way.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we don't finish dealing with something, and then something happens.
Yeah.
And then sometimes life is terrible, and you'll have more than one person die kind of right next to each other. That makes the whole process really hard. And it's okay that you know that it's really hard and that you acknowledge that. But yeah, any of those things.
Yeah.
Because you and I are different.
Right.
And so if I hurt, I'm going to respond my way.
Yeah.
And if you hurt, you're going to respond your way.
Exactly.
We must not let that response, though, get out of hand and be inappropriate. Another thing I like to say to people, just because you're grieving is not an excuse to hurt other people because you hurt. Yes, you've had this terrible experience, but it's not okay to hurt somebody else. That would be an inappropriate response.
And I think I was having a conversation with a different mental health professional, and I said that a lot of times we especially nowadays, everybody has therapy words, but not necessarily the therapy process.
Right.
And so you'll hear that term, hurt people, and that should be the excuse. But I've seen situations where a person is like, oh, I did that because this person just passed. And they're expecting that to be the excuse.
You give yourself an excuse to be inappropriate.
Yeah.
No, it's not okay to hurt people. And it is true. Sometimes I'll look at a crowd or notice what someone is doing, and I think, oh my goodness, that person has had a terrible experience because of the way they're treating other people. I know that there's hurt in their past.
Wow.
Hurt that they've not dealt with. And oftentimes that hurt is a loss of something or someone. Because we talked about the fact that grieving is not always the death of someone.
Absolutely, yeah.
It can be the loss of someone or the loss of something or, gosh, some of us have had terrible childhoods and they think it wasn't as bad as something else, but it was bad to them. And so they've had a loss of good parenting skills.
Wow.
They have had a loss of the love that they should have had growing up, or all kinds of hurts. And those things need to be grieved.
Yeah.
They need to be acknowledged. They need to be dealt with.
Ooh. I love that because that takes us into that part of the conversation, because I think what you're mentioning, people don't realize. You said the loss of of having great parents, or the loss of your childhood, you know, the innocent childhood, or maybe the loss of not having Christmases or birthdays celebrated. People don't, they think, oh, you know, growing up, I had a terrible time growing up, not realizing that you need to grieve the process of growing up. I never even looked at it like that, as for what people need to experience, because in order to be able to grow, you need to grieve that process.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was terrible, and I don't care how terrible somebody else's life was. That was terrible for you, and it was terrible, and you have to deal with it.
Wow. So then let's talk about that loss of something that is still existing. First of all, you and I talked about that loss of like maybe a friendship, or the loss of a marriage through divorce, where the person hasn't died. They're still around, they're up, they're moving, they're healthy, you've been on their social media and you're watching them live their lives, you know. How does a person handle that kind of grief, and is it different than grieving the loss through death?
I think it's different primarily because in a way, there's hope. Maybe we can get back together.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll realize that they shouldn't have done this to
mercy,
me.
yes.
And it's all of that, and so it just kind of changes the dynamics.
Wow. Yes.
Again, relationships are not something that you can just throw away and it's okay. They're not an old pair of shoes. It's not a 30-minute answer, or I guess they have series now. It's not like that.
Yeah.
You know, life is just a lot different than that. And you really have to acknowledge the pain. You don't have to show it to everybody. I wouldn't say that you might necessarily want to let that person know how terrible you feel. You may, but you want to let yourself know how terrible
absolutely.
it feels, and then deal with it.
What you said was so important, because I want to go back there when you said you think in your head you want not getting back together, but you want them to know, or you want them to say, hey, this is this is how you made me feel, or you were wrong for this, or you're the reason why this relationship ended. Resting in that space, does that complicate our grief process?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't allow you to grow, because yes, no, maybe it was it's rarely just one person's issue.
Right.
It's several. It's the two of you, and then maybe a third and fourth person too.
Yeah.
And so you really want to deal with the reality of it. When we grieve, sometimes we like to only think of the good, or only think of the bad. That was a combination. It was always a combination.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to acknowledge that.
Wow, wow. Because there are times, I think, where even in our own process, we do hang on to all of the good times, whether it's a death, or whether we're dealing with somebody that's still alive. We're constantly like, oh, they were this, they were that. Sometimes you'll go to funerals and hear all of these accolades of how incredible the person was, right? And you're grieving just the good.
Yes.
And you're saying that you have to grieve the complete relationship, or the complete person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because everyone has good, bad, in between about them, and you need to be able to acknowledge that.
I love that. So our time is getting away from us, and we knew that this was going to happen, Dr. Scott, because this is such an incredible conversation, and I know it's so necessary for everybody out there. But I do want to kind of go back a little bit when you were talking about the inappropriate ways to grieve. You covered the alcohol, you covered the sometimes the inappropriate sexual behavior. I know that sometimes people think, they sleep a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, and they're just like, I just need to go to bed, and they find themselves, not being able to keep up at work, or not being able to keep up at
Right.
school, or not having the desire to. How then do we, as a person that may be on the outside, look in on this person and recognizing that the grieving process is not healthy? What are some ways that we can encourage that person? Hey, maybe you need to go about this differently, without being accused of not respecting their process.
You want to be supportive. Mm-hmm. You want to allow someone to really grieve their own way. And you want to give them some time, unless you're noticing something really unhealthy, like being suicidal. Mm-hmm. Of course, that's never okay. Mm-hmm. And then you want to step in and be aggressive about helping them get some help. Mm-hmm. But what I like to say to someone who's grieving, sometimes you just have to do the next step. And maybe the next step is to get out of bed. Mm-hmm. Maybe the next step is, I'm going to brush my teeth today. Mm-hmm. Or, the house is really terrible, maybe I'm going to vacuum today. Allow yourself to move forward. Doesn't have to be fast.
Yeah.
But just a little bit to move forward and be able to see a light at the end of the tunnel. Mm-hmm. Because ultimately, you want to be at a point where you can honor the person that you lost.
Yeah.
And there are just various ways that you can do that brings them honor and helps resolve it for you.
I love that. Mm-hmm. So you made me think of something. We're gonna, and this, I don't even know if we can cover it in the time that we have, but there are people out there that sometimes have terrible experiences with people, mm-hmm. and then they lose them. How does one go about grieving a person that gave them a horrible life or a horrible experience? Whether it was through abuse or through, some sort of tragic event, or they caused some sort of tragedy in their lives. Is it still important to go through the grieving process, even if you may not have ended on good terms with that person?
I'm going to say yes, mm-hmm. and I'm going to give you one better.
Okay.
Sometimes that person feels guilty for feeling glad because that person is gone. Mm-hmm. Those are just all feelings that need to be dealt with.
Wow, yeah.
Because sometimes other people, well, why are you upset? Wasn't it good that you got out of that relationship? But that relationship still meant something to you, even if it was a bad relationship. Because mm-hmm. there must have been some good somewhere.
Yeah.
And so you just kind of have to continue down the road, mm-hmm. continue in the process.
That journey that you were talking about,
really
continue that journey. Wow.
It really is.
Listen, before we go, I would love for you to tell our audience, just give them maybe a few things to remember as they experience their own grieving processes. Just maybe a couple of things where you're just like, as you begin, or maybe you're in the middle of the process, mm-hmm. what are some things that you can tell them to kind of reflect on or remember?
You should remember that grief is a process and it's a journey. And you get to go on the journey your own way. And that's important as long as you're on the journey. Mm-hmm. You can't stop until you get to the end of the journey. So it's okay to be on the journey. So that's probably... So you do the journey, and you get to do it your own way.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Mm-hmm. Those are two important things. And number 3, if it's hard, it's okay to get some help. Mm. Sometimes it's important to pay somebody to talk about this terrible stuff that you may not want to burden somebody else with. Mm-hmm. It's okay. It doesn't mean you're crazy, because we all need somebody to talk to sometimes.
Yes, absolutely.
And sometimes that person is a counselor or a psychiatrist. Give yourself that. It doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're strong and you want to stay strong.
I have loved having you here today. This has been incredible. We have to have you back. I love this conversation. It is so necessary, and just remembering those things. And one other thing I wanted to add is because you said, listen, God is a big God.
Yes.
He can handle all of our feelings, all of our talking to, all of our anger, all of our frustration. And we want to encourage our people out there to also talk to him, find a therapist, all of those different things. Listen, my excuseless family, Dr. Scott has left us with some incredible ways on how to deal with grief and process grief. And we want you to begin to take that conversation other places, whether you've lost someone through death, whether you've lost a job or lost a friendship or anything that requires you to be on that journey. And just like she said, when you are on that journey, you ultimately are beginning to be in a space where with your mental health, you can become excuseless.
What's good, everybody? The excuseless revolution is underway and lives are being radically changed. There are some of you that have the hard copy of the book. There's some that have the ebook. But I want you to know we've heard the call, and the audiobook is now available on Audible. There are some of us that need to see the word, some of us need to hear it, but however you receive it, God be praised. I want to encourage you to go on to Audible, get your version, and continue the journey of becoming excuseless. Hello, I'm Pastor Deblier Snell, Speaker Director for the Breath of Life television ministry. This ministry was established to take the gospel of Jesus Christ throughout North America and across the globe. My goal is to make Jesus Christ known through the preaching of the word. I need you to know that we need your financial partnership in order to make sure that the gospel can go into every hill, into every rural county, and into every inner city. And we can only take the gospel as far as the gifts that you lend to us. We thank you for your financial partnership in the past, and I'm asking that you would continue to be a financial partner with this ministry going forward. Here are some ways you can give. You can give online at our website at www.breathoflife.tv. You can send your gift by mail to Breath of Life, P.O. Box 5960, Huntsville, Alabama 35814. You can call the office at 256-929-6460, or you can text the phrase "Give to BOLTV" to 188-364-GIVE, or the easiest thing is through Cash App at $Breath of Life TV. I want you to know that every dime that you give goes right back into the ministry so that we can enlarge our reach and make sure that the entire world knows that Jesus saves and that Jesus Christ is coming again. God bless you, and we thank you for your generosity to the Breath of Life ministry.